Welcome back to a new season and new opportunities to learn from some of the very best minds in the talent acquisition space. With a new season of Tea Time and Talent Acquisition, we've got so much to look forward to, but in this particular episode, we're going to explore the very crucial aspect of is recruitment evolving or losing its way. Here's a little bit of what we've got coming up with you today with the help of Jeffery Lovejoy.
I don't think AI should be making decisions as far as whether we reject or progress a candidate. I think those decisions still need to be done by us as humans and not letting AI take over that. But I think if AI can help us kind of shift, kind of highlight the best of the best candidates and specifically what we're looking for in the roles, and I think there's some good positive use for AI. But I am a firm believer, though, that we are recruiters for a reason. We need to engage talent, need to find the best of the best talent for our organization, and that still needs to be done by people. I really hope over the next couple of years that employers really start investing in that early talent because as an organization, we need to start listening to that early talent. They're coming in with different ways of doing things, different ideas. You know what? If you don't have that talent in your organization and you're not listening to them, your organization is going to turn into a blockbuster and it's going to go out of business, right?
I've watched Jeffrey's career for many, many years. I am genuinely a fan, and I'm so excited to have him on this podcast. He's a brilliant individual, amazing career, and ultimately someone that we could all learn from. So I really do hope you stick around to the end. There's a lot to take in around candidate experience, project work, and getting the recruiters back to what they do best. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. Welcome to Tea Time with Talent Acquisition, the podcast aimed at fostering knowledge and sharing stories within the vibrant talent acquisition community. I'm your host, Eden, and for the next hour or so, I'm going to be joined by someone who since 2020, his name has frequently appeared on my LinkedIn feed, consistently highlighted for commendable reasons. Observing his career progression and the significant contributions he's made in supporting underrepresented groups and nurturing future talents across organizations such as N26, SumUp, and Zalando, it has truly been inspiring. I'm excited about the opportunity to spend some time with him and gain genuine insights from his experience. And given his extensive background in various industries, roles, team dynamics, and projects, we plan to delve into the perspective on the recruitment industry to explore whether it's been straying from its intended path. So when you're ready, grab your favorite tea or coffee if you prefer, and join me in welcoming today's guest, Jeffery Lovejoy. But thank you so much for joining.
Glad to be here. Super excited.
And like I said, I genuinely mean every word of that. As I said to you before we clicked record the other day, your career is one that I truly am excited to kind of dive into. And like I said, it is for all the right reasons as well. I think what you do for underrepresented groups and future talents is needed, but not many people gravitate towards that kind of recruitment. So before we kind of delve into the core topic of recruitment, the future of recruitment, and kind of what you wanted to discuss, I kind of just want to take a step back and explore what's happening specifically this week when we're recording. So the AI Act has passed in Europe, and this kind of segues a little bit into what we're going to be talking about slightly. So I just want to kind of get your perspective on how you feel AI has a place or doesn't have a place in talent acquisition from your own perspective.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I actually didn't read the news. I heard some stuff was coming about with AI. I've used some AI in the past. Actually, just recently on my last organization, we were implementing some AI. I think there's pros and cons to both of it. I think in the recruitment industry, we all know as recruiters that we just get high volumes of applications. Mm-hmm. And I think, where AI can help us and actually help us be more efficient and better is helping us sort through those applications. Having AI help us find the best of the best candidates that we can then focus the right attention on and getting those candidates moving forward. Because we all know, and there's no fault to the candidates, but there's, during economies, during recession issues, candidates panic, right? And they do what I always like to call spam applying. They'll just apply for anything and everything without reading job descriptions. They're not the right fit. And it's that kind of direction that candidates take that actually sometimes impact the great candidates that are trying to get elevated or trying to get highlighted and get attention from recruiters. So I think using AI in that perspective. Now, I think when it comes to AI, I think it's just to help us sort. I don't think AI should be making decisions as far as whether we reject or progress a candidate. I think those decisions still need to be done by us as humans and not letting AI take over that. But I think if AI can help us kind of shift, kind of highlight the best of the best candidates and specifically what we're looking for in the roles, and I think there's some good positive use for AI. But I am a firm believer, though, that we are recruiters for a reason. We need to engage talent, we need to find the best of the best talent for our organization, and that still needs to be done by people.
Yeah, and the reason I brought that up is kind of AI has been and quote unquote a project aspect for many organizations, and kind of what we want to talk about today is how are we as recruiters kind of spending maybe too much time on project work and not enough time on finding talent. And that's kind of the reason I wanted to bring that element up, because I'm seeing it time and time again, a lot of distractions when it's kind of, is it really the right distraction to be having? And there's so much. I mean, AI isn't new. That's the thing. It's new in the perspective that it's more accessible for us. But if you take a look at ATS systems, they've had AI embedded at some point into their system, and they haven't just branded it as AI because it wasn't cool and sexy at that point. You didn't need to know about it, but it was there for 4, 5, 6 years before. But now it's just become more accessible. So it's kind of created this element of shiny new object. Should we have a look at that? And it's just repeatedly kind of been happening across loads of different industries. So segueing into kind of what you want to focus on, when you reference kind of recruitment losing its way, which is ultimately the title of this podcast, what do you actually mean?
So, I'm just kind of using myself as an example, being on the job market at the moment and going through interviews, and even myself as a candidate getting not so great candidate experience from some employers. And it's like, if we're doing that to our own recruiters who know the industry inside and out and know the expectations, I can only imagine what's going on to candidates. And I've seen in some organizations that it seems everything has become revolving around projects. Now, don't get me wrong. Projects are important. We need to have projects in place to help us become more efficient. But we need to make sure we're doing it in moderation and making sure that it's not taking away from our actual duties of what we actually need to be doing, which is hiring great people. If we are getting overwhelmed with projects and it's consuming most of our time, what are we doing with our candidates? Are we falling behind our hiring forecast? And, are we not getting back in time with our candidates? And I think that's where I feel like the industry is starting to lose its way, because it's all about projects. And now some recruiters have kind of caught on that, hey, if I lead and deliver on a project, they start playing that corporate game, right? And they're like, ooh, I'm going to get ahead because I've done this project and I've led this project. But then sometimes they'll do the project, lead the project, present the project, and then nothing ever really comes out of it. So what was the point of that dedication too? So I think it really needs to be a balance. And I've gone into organizations where I get it. Like, we need to have some projects in place because we know we need to get more efficient. We need to get better, in streamlining our recruitment process. Our time to hire is way too long. So how are we going to reduce our time to hire? Yes, that's a great project, but having 5, 6, 7, 8 projects running at the same time when it should be maybe 20, 25% of your day to day, and the rest of the day is processing your candidates, giving them the attention they deserve, the feedback that they deserve, going through the different processes, and then leaving that 25%. I think in the past, when I've always managed my teams, I try to keep their workload balance at 70% on their capacity when you look at the level of jobs. And I even try to forecast a team based on that, and then leaving them that 30% to do what they want to do, whether it's a project, whether it's running on a diversity initiative, whether it's going to an event that can help upskill them, or maybe some sort of training. Like, I've had some of my technical recruiters before, I've encouraged them, hey, go do a Java class, so you could talk the lingo when you're talking to these techies, so you know what they're talking about. So I try to leave that 30% dedicated for the recruiter to do what they're passionate about.
So there's a few elements, and we'll touch upon all of them. So I'm going to keep the 70-30 element in my mind to come back to. But we'll talk about candidate experience. So you've obviously said there, you're in the job market yourself, you're seeing it firsthand, and let's be honest, you're not a inexperienced individual. You've worked with some stellar companies, you've got years under your belt, quote unquote, you know your shit, right? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
tooting your own horn there. So I know it's a painfully obvious thing to say candidate experience is important. And anyone listening will probably sit and go, what the, right? You seeing firsthand that it's not working. Let's just reset the expectation level. What does good candidate experience look like from your perspective? And why is it important to even just hit the good?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things. There's one, it's all about your brand, right? If, you got to think in a lot of ways, like, and let's look at the companies I worked for in the past, like with Zalando and N26 and SumUp, like, especially Zalando, you're talking to potential customers. I've, interviewed interns before that, and I was like, oh, so why are you passionate about Zalando? They're passionate because they love shopping on Zalando. They loved, the app, everything. N26, same thing. They loved, the banking was so easy. And these are our customers. So if we provide horrible candidate experience, it's the same as providing bad customer service, as somebody called a customer service line. So, it's all about brand reputation. You want to position yourself as the player in the industry. You want the best talent. And if you're not getting good candidate experience, that spreads. I remember a time when I was recruiting in Scotland, and I just took it over recruiting, and we had hired an intern that just had a horrible experience in a region of Scotland that's super small. There's only like 2 main universities for us, super hard to recruit for. And I was relying on that university. And that university used to give me about 20 hires a year. And then when I joined, we had 2. I was like, what's happened? And what I didn't know is that intern who had previously such a bad experience went back to university to finish their final year and just said how
Spread
horrible their internship experience was. That nobody was applying again. And it literally took over a year to rebuild that brand and reputation that we had to get people to start applying again. So, we have to be delivering great candidate care. And I think what good looks like is setting expectations from the very beginning of how long is the process for, how many stages. And I've countered this even in our own processes before where, you'll have your standard 4 stages, 5 stages, maybe, and all of a sudden you find yourself doing a 6 and a 7th and an 8th. And you're like, what's going on? Why am I doing so many? So I think we have to be clear and transparent of like, hey, candidate, like, so here's the process going forward. You're going to expect X, Y, and Z. It's going to be 4 stages. I'm going to get back to you by this date and actually get back to them because the candidate is waiting, especially like I look at myself like I'm relocating back to Berlin on the 30th of April, but I'm open to going anywhere in Europe, really. So like, I need to know, like, where's my life going to move to? If I'm interviewing for a job in another area, like, am I going to go to that area? I don't know. Yeah, I need to start preparing. They're life-changing decisions that you have to make. So it gets very frustrating as a candidate if you're being told, I'm going to get back to you by Friday, and then next thing you know, they don't. And I'm like, okay, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. You wait till Monday. You still don't hear anything. Now it's Tuesday. And now you're like, I don't want to be that pestering candidate to be chasing the recruiter when I know how busy they are as a recruiter, right? So I think just being very clear in the expectations from the beginning and then hold yourself as a recruiter accountable. Like, don't overpromise. If you know you're not going to be able to get back by Friday, it's okay. Tell the candidate, like, hey, it's going to be a busy week. I'm doing other interviews with other candidates. It's going to be X amount of days. So I apologize. It might be a week, before you hear back or something.
By the way, there's 2 points to make. So one, you might have seen I was mad typing after you said about the customer candidate experience aspect. I've never thought about it like that. B2C, you're exactly right. A lot of the B2C customers, especially interns, juniors, and actually at all levels, might have actually used the product. So I've just made that specific note because that's such a powerful way to look at how you're creating your candidate experience. That's a customer. And I've never thought about it like that.
Yeah, and I owe that to my time at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, where, I spent 13 years of my career there, where it was always about the customer. And I think the one thing I loved about Enterprise was their slogan, take care of your customers, take care of your people, and profits will follow. And I've always kind of led my life by that of like, hey, take care of our candidates, take care of my team, make sure my team's developing. And you know what? Yeah, profitability and success is going to follow. It's going to follow for my recruiters. It's going to follow for the business. Why? Because we're hiring great people, because we're going back to the roots of taking care of our customers, which is candidates.
The other aspect as well, and I think coming from the external side of recruitment, I also acknowledge that you guys on the internal side of things are super busy. And sometimes it's not actually even your fault that you don't have feedback. It's sitting with the hiring team. But I also have seen firsthand, especially over the last decade, where, there's no response at all from anyone. Like hiring teams saying nothing, then the recruiter on the internal side saying nothing, then we're left on the third side of things going, well, we don't know. And then the candidate's left to suffer because nobody's communicating down the way. So I would even echo it on our side because, I pester people because that's my job, is to see where things are. And I would just implore anyone who's on the internal side, if you don't have feedback because of whatever reason, just say that. That's enough to go back to a candidate and say, hey, really sorry, I do not know where we stand at this moment in time. I'm doing my best to find out. And if it's on the weekend, you start talking about the weekend plan. Like, I really hope you have a good one. We'll check in on Monday. It's little touch points like that just make you rest as a candidate to go, okay, cool, I can breathe. I got a guy right now who's had a final interview and he's on holiday and he's asking me where we are. I was like, look, I promise you I'll let you know by the end of the week where we go. Relax. Enjoy your espresso martinis. Soak up the sun. This isn't time to stress. Just relax. Yeah. That's enough for him to hopefully kind of be in a good mood when he comes back. We'll see.
And it goes a long way. I think there's two things that are happening there is, one, we're not getting feedback from our hiring managers. So sometimes the recruiter is kind of afraid to tell the candidate that. But, giving the candidate some sort of communication of like, hey, just let you know, I'm chasing the hiring manager. We still don't have any feedback yet. They're still collecting their feedback with the other candidates they've interviewed, right? But I think the other thing that's happening too, and we need to be aware of this, is that, coming out of Corona, like all of the organizations scaled back talent acquisition. And we've seen over the last year, lots of layoffs within talent acquisition. So I think now things are picking up again, but the teams and all the different organizations are not the right size to handle the capacity. So there is a case where candidates are just getting lost because the recruiters are doing 10 times more work. They're working on, 10 times more different, roles open at the same time, and hundreds of candidates. So there's a chance too that, maybe the candidate did get lost in the process. So I think right now the biggest thing is organizations need to relook at their hiring forecasts, and do they have the right size team to meet that forecast? Because if they look at it, they probably don't. And I think there's still even a little hesitation of hiring more people on a team because people are still uncertain of what the future is going to look like for 2024 and beyond.
I mean, what I've experienced Q1 has been a very positive difference in what we saw in Q3 and Q4 of last year. So especially now look into Berlin, to the investment scene. So we've had around 550-ish million invested into Q1 of this year, and Q3 and Q4 was fluctuating around 350 to 400 in each. So already we're up 100 mil, which is an excellent kind of injection at the top of the funnel, and it always flows down. And when we're seeing as external recruiters positions coming open, then you know that the internal teams are stretched beyond belief. That's the sign. You don't push out to recruiters if you can handle everything yourself. So it's a real positive sign. And that's part of what I'm coaching on companies at the moment, is going into Q1 has been a different story from what most are experiencing. And they're readjusting hiring plans. They're readjusting strategic projects. Does this sound true to you? And it's been this week, pretty much a resounding yes. So I think we're not through the thick of it. Like, we're still, blurry, but we're probably through the worst of what expectations are. But coming back to kind of the candidate experience aspect, who is responsible for the candidate experience project? So where should that be driven from, essentially?
Well, I think there's a couple aspects, right? I think candidate experience should be coming down from the top, right?
Mm-hmm.
They need to be pushing it to where the recruiters know that, hey, as an organization, this is important to us because these are our customers that are applying. So I think it needs to be pushed down from the top where they're setting some clear KPIs of like, hey, every CV is reviewed within 72 hours. Every candidate after an interview is back in touch 5 days after, and setting those clear KPIs. And I have always done that with my team as well. And I think, I used to use Talent Wall as a great tool because you could set, candidates on a red, yellow, and green light system. It
What was
helps
that
the
called? Talent
recruiter.
Wall.
Talent Wall. It's normally like a
Yeah.
bolt-on to like Greenhouse ATS. It kind of helps, where you could go in and see where all your candidates are in the process and how many days they're in each stage live in a red, yellow, green light system. And you set what you want that. So green is like 0 to 5 days. Yellow, they've gone 6 to 9 days. And then red is 9 and beyond, right? So that helps, on one, job board, they could kind of see where all the candidates are sitting on their ATS. But yeah, it comes from the top of us as managers setting those clear KPIs. But I think also from the bottom, the recruiters should care and B, understand why it's important. But then you also need that additional support from your employer branding team as well, like helping us look at our communication that we're using in our ATS system. I've seen lots. I'm getting rejected for roles, and I'm actually just appalled with some of the rejection emails that I've gotten, and I've actually saved some of them as poor examples of what it should not look like.
Can I see them after this? I'm curious. And we'll take company names out. Don't get me wrong, but I would love to be able to show these as part of, we'll put it in a PDF document and attach it to this or whatnot.
Simple stuff of like, unfortunately, you've not been selected, or we're not moving forward your application. And it's just like, I think there's more softness that you can bring into those emails. And I get it. A rejection is never a good thing to get. But even like when you look at LinkedIn, for example, you have the easy apply button, you apply through LinkedIn. What you need to pay attention to is you're getting rejections through LinkedIn. And I don't know if you've noticed that, but if you do easy apply and somebody rejects you, they're using LinkedIn on the other side. It comes through, and to me, it actually looks like junk mail. You get
so it's an auto rejection depending on what they set up as their criteria. So if you're saying location, as in obviously in your case, you're not in Berlin today, and then they'll see, okay, you're not in Berlin, auto reject. I
know if it's
would
auto
highly
reject or not, but like when I see these emails come through, because I'm obviously I'm heavy. I use LinkedIn a lot, right? I'm active on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn tends to send you a lot of spam emails. So it just looked like spam. And I clicked on it. I was like, oh my God, this is a rejection from LinkedIn. So I found that quite interesting. But yeah, you need that support from employer branding and helping you kind of build out those communication emails for rejections for all your different stages. So I think, when you look at candidate experience, it's a collaborative effort from all your teams. But I think most important is providing that training of expectation from the business to your recruiter team. And it's either the recruiters or the coordinators. I know a lot of organizations will have a coordinator that's organizing all the interviews and that kind of stuff as well.
So candidate experience we touched upon first, because obviously one that is, as you said in our kind of pre-call, was the most important thing we could be focusing on, but it's also one of the biggest things that gets impacted when we talk about project work. So project work, give me a couple of examples of what project work typically involves. If someone's listening, they can sit and go, okay, I'm in that position. I know what we're focusing on now.
So like for a project for candidate experience, for example?
For anything. So as a TA leader or as a TA team, individual contributor, what type of projects would I typically be requested to do or to be involved in?
Well, I think, first of all, you need to take a step back and understand, like, what are the business priorities, right? Like, and understand your own data of like, what's the data telling you? Like, are we seeing massive dropouts after a phone screen with recruiters, that candidates are deciding not to move forward with the organization. So, I would question that of like, all right, do we need to put together a project on just simple things of like selling versus telling, how we position the organization, and do our recruiters need some additional training to really get candidates excited about going to that next stage, to do the coding test, for example, if it's a tech role, or, doing a case study, if that's the case as well. So I think don't just jump in and do a project just to say, hey, I'm doing a project. Like, make sure the project is aligning with the overall business strategy. If it's a time to hire issue that your organization is facing, then you need to dissect the data to find out, okay, what's the issue here? Why do we have a longer time to hire? Do we not have enough interviewer capacity? I've seen that before in an organization where, candidates were waiting up to 3 weeks just to get their first interview. And I'm like, we don't have enough interviewers, so like we need to train up more interviewers in the organization. And the data told us that, right? And also the rejection or the self-select out rejection reasons. The candidates, that reject their offers or reject themselves out of the process is like, I've accepted another job. And it's like, okay, and you look at where they were at and how long they've been at, we're competing against other companies when you have specifically, you're working with a top candidate. So yeah, do a project, make sure it makes sense and it's aligned with the overall business strategy and the direction, but like understand like what's the data and what do you want to achieve out of that project? What are your expected outcomes?
And again,
and what's important?
Sorry. Yeah, I was going to say, is that going to be driven again by the leader of the team or, top down, or as a contributor, should I be looking at that data myself and seeing how can I better improve the team? Because I imagine as well, you might be restricted on what you can see and what you can't see.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I think there's two different ways. Like, yeah, as a manager, I'm looking at the data and I'm trying to understand, like, all right, I'm trying to align the business, but then align what's going on within my team and like how do we kind of connect the dots there. But also, I think the projects, can be proposed and come from their own team, because the one thing is like, I don't like to be the dictator and like dictating all, the project that, hey, you need to do this. It's better if it's coming from your recruiter because it's something they've identified and they have some drive and passion behind that project, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to sign up somebody that's like, oh, I don't care about this. They probably should care on everything, right? But there's just some that won't be passionate for that. So I think it's great, for us as leaders is kind of highlight some of the challenges that we're seeing, and let's let the recruiters come to us and see what they put together, because it's going to help their development. Yeah, we can continue to tell them, but if they kind of take away and look at the data themselves and come up with the solutions themselves, I think that's better for their own personal development and better for the organization.
You also find champions to some degree, right? So if you take a look at kind of diversity and inclusion efforts, you will find people who organically gravitate towards that. And then they'll, as you say, drive that. And it doesn't feel like you're just pulling teeth out. But on the flip side, somebody else might be extremely passionate around sales specifically and training people. And when you kind of find like these go-to people and create champions in your team and new people join, these are the people who you gravitate towards for certain topics. And I'm talking out loud, but I imagine as a leader of a larger team, when you've got those people in place, your life becomes a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah. It was funny, like my time at Zalando, we launched some amazing initiatives, right? And I just took, so that when you look at the Women in Tech Reskilling program that I was heavily involved with and kind of initiating, rolling out, it came from one conversation from Virginia, who was director of TA at the time, came to me. Well, I actually went to her and said, hey, I've built out a program before of kind of like a reskilling or kind of a like kind of a fast track kind of what's the word I'm trying to think of, an accelerator program I'd built, and I never actually got to launch it because COVID hit and we cut it. And I was kind of talking her through the idea. She's like, actually, Jeff, I like that, and I had a similar idea, but I had a similar idea. Instead of hiring external people to accelerate, how about we look at our own internal people? And can we do something around women in tech and build out like a reskilling or let's accelerate their careers into tech? So I took what I've done before and started working on this kind of by myself. And then all of a sudden word got out and people started reaching out. I was like, Jeff, I heard you working on this women in tech reskilling. What's going on? And it just exploded, right? Everybody wanted to get involved. Everyone was super interested. And the same thing happened with the Adnan internship for minorities, underrepresented groups. It was a partnership with the organization Adnan, and we had an Adnan internship. And we hired some amazing, talented people on that internship program. And after the first year of doing it, it exploded, and everyone's reaching out to me and say, Jeff, I heard the talent was amazing. Like, how do we get involved? When are you doing it again? And again, everyone got passionate about it. So it actually allowed us to launch that project.
So it starts with your kind of interest and then kind of snowballs, but you're not going to everyone going, hey, I've got this idea, listen to me, you've got to get involved. It's starting, getting a few things rolling and then letting it organically drip feed through the organization.
Yeah, and it wasn't where I was doing these programs just because I was wanting recognition or anything. I
Yeah.
was working on it because it was just the right thing to do. And the organization, had the appetite of wanting to do something. And this took, delivering an amazing project like Adnan, where it then spiraled into like everyone wanting to be a part of it. And it's a project that's still going on now today. So I think for the recruiters that come up with their kind of own projects that they're passionate about gives them that energy and drive in their own personal development. It's something for them to be proud of, because when we finally launched, when I left Zalando, everything was finally launched, and we had 20 women being reskilled into being junior software engineers. That was probably the highlight of my career. And it's something that me personally will always kind of take away. And I kind of want my recruiters to do that. I want my recruiters to come up with whatever that project is, to work on it, deliver it, see the outcome and success of that project. And they own that. That's them. They say, I did that. And they automatically see the impact.
10 years down the line, they can look back and talk on a podcast or whatever they have in 10 years' time and have that again. So those projects that you helped deliver were driven by the data that you saw. We needed support in that side of things, or we needed support here. And that's what kind of started that aspect of, I guess, prioritization. Because then it comes down to too much project work versus too much recruitment work, and finding that balance. So you use the data to determine what could be, looked into, and then general passion took over at that point, and it's kind of what led to the projects being delivered.
And I think it's the one thing I learned with the women in tech reskilling program, and it was one of the biggest projects I ever worked on, is that us as recruiters, we also need to understand that when is the project too big for you? Right? Because this spiraled into something enormous. And I needed help, right? And there were some amazing, amazing people that were working on that project. It wasn't just me, everyone. There were so many people, amazing people involved in that project. I won't start naming names on it because I'll probably forget somebody and then they'll be upset, but they knew who they are. But it was a massive team that was around that, and everyone had their own passions and ownership of wanting to deliver for it. So I think it's important also that if a project gets too big for you, that is okay. Mm-hmm. It is okay to ask for help and to get support, because you can't do it all by yourself. And I think where recruiters get lost and then they start losing their way and it starts impacting their own personal job and their performance and candidate care is because maybe they are working on a project that is important and it's gotten too big for them, and they're kind of nervous and they're afraid to say, hey, this is too big for me. I need help, right? So it is okay. Ask for help.
And actually, that's going to lead straight into the next section. Sorry. So say I'm an individual contributor, and you mentioned the 70-30 aspect that you try to create for your team, 70% capacity, 30% buffer for projects. How can I, as a contributor, how can I aim for something like that if, I'm looking at my leader and it's not being driven by them, right? But how can I kind of take on something like that and try and find that balance?
Well, I think it needs to come from the leader, right? Because, us as a manager managing the team, we need to forecast for that, right? Anytime you want to add somebody to the team, you need to tell the business, why do I need to add somebody? You need to build a business case to explain why we need additional resources. I think a recruiter can't get to that 70% capacity level without the support of growing the team, right? Because they're going to keep giving roles. They can't control that. Yeah. We can't control when somebody leaves and we have to open up a new rec. And next thing you know, like, oh my God, I just closed 2 and I'm opening up 3 more. I was hoping it was going to get a little bit less and I was going to get a breather to work on a project, right? So I think if you want to get your teams to a 70 or 30, or maybe it's too much, maybe let's just say 85, right, as a start, because so many teams, a lot of companies are hesitant about hiring a lot of more recruiters now. So let's say you just want to get to that 85%, then you need to forecast, okay, like at 85%, how many roles, if a recruiter is going to be 85%, can you actually manage on a day-to-day? And then kind of build that business case of like, hey, I'm going to drive this team at 85% capacity, leaving this much for project, which means I need an additional 1 person on the team to reduce the capacity for the other maybe 3 recruiters. And the business will probably be asking, well, why? What's the benefit of that? It's like, well, the benefit is that we're now going to be able to initiate X, Y, and Z project that is required or is aligned with the business strategy so we can deliver for you, and delivering the best candidate care in the process, right? So long hold, we're going to be able to reduce time to hire. We're going to be able to spend more time maybe sourcing great candidates versus having to go to an agency to help save costs. There's a lot of benefits there that you can sell to the organization when you're building that business case of like why I need my team at 85%.
I guess it's just how you're going to frame it and then ultimately hit the buying motives of your manager. It's the basic selling aspect, but I also think when we get into talent acquisition, I believe that sometimes we lose that ability to sell. I've seen it personally, both internal and external. We kind of hide behind emails. We hide behind just telling, as you say, not selling. And then that ultimately leads to a position where people in more senior management roles are also reluctant to push back and say, we need to do this. And then before you know it, you've got a recruiter's got 15, 20 roles. And that is, in my opinion, far too much. If you want a good process, a good experience, way, way too many. Even for scaling companies, far too many roles. You mentioned before as well, and this is kind of like the third point you wanted to discuss, was having fun at work, which is quite an arbitrary and quite a broad thing to talk about, because you'd think people would want to have fun. We'd like to think people aren't just joining. Of course, we've got bills to pay, 100%. Of course, we're going to work, but we'd like to have fun while we're doing it. But why do you think that is such an important component? Why do you think it's relevant to what we're going through or what we're talking about today?
So I always look at it as you have to have fun. I'm not saying you have to have fun. Maybe you don't want to have fun at work,
You will have fun at work, Jeff.
You will. But I think the way I look at it is that as recruiters, we're the face of the company, right? And I'm sorry, but candidates know if you're having fun or if you're not having fun. They know if you're stressed or if you're not stressed. So if you're not having fun at work, then it doesn't come across to a candidate. Like right now, you could probably tell I'm having fun in this podcast with you, right? So you could tell through my body language.
I think so.
Yeah, but you can tell through my body language, and we're having a good laugh, and that comes across to a candidate, right? So it's important for us as managers to make sure you take a step back and ask them, are you having fun? Yeah. And then if they're not, okay, well, why? What's going on? Oh, I'm overworked, too much capacity. I'm like, okay, well, can I take something from you, like to help release some of that pressure? Or, great, you know what? Let's all go after work and have a drink. Let's go do something, or, take them out and let's go, take them to a networking event, or, find out like, well, what would be fun for you? Like everyone is motivated by different things. Mm-hmm. Some people motivated by money, some people motivated by networking, socializing. We need to understand like what motivates our team. But if you're not having fun, it's not coming across to the candidate and you're not representing the organization. And I've been on a couple of calls as a candidate recently where I can tell that recruiter looks super stressed.
Yeah, it's a shame when it does happen, because you're absolutely right. We are the face. Be it internal or external, you are representing that organization. We're all here to do a good job for that organization. And I do know, as in firsthand, I've seen it, candidates take jobs sometimes when they like the person they're working with. You get to the end of a process, you've got two positions, and I've had people in my side of things say to me, I've taken a job because you work with them and I liked working with you. They were equal in everything, same salary, same sort of team structure. I've taken it purely because I like the process more than the other. And it's so powerful. It doesn't happen every single role. It shouldn't happen every single role anyway. That's the deciding factor. But the 1, 2, 3 times it does in your career, then you would have thanked, should have listened to Jeff and Eden on that podcast more about candidate experience, because that's where it comes into play. I've got one final question, and then I will leave you for it. From your side, what do you think the future of talent acquisition will look like, say 5 years from now?
Oh, wow, that's a big question. Well, I can tell you what I hope the future looks like more. And this is just something that's close to my heart, but I hope organizations start opening their doors more to that early talent, that next generation coming in. And you know what? Actually listening to them. It's been we all know it's been a rough couple of years. And a lot of organizations, when it gets tough, the first thing they cut are your entry-level programs, your internship programs, your graduate programs. And it was so sad to see, so many of that being cut. And, I've been in these organizations where, I'm the one that's making these phone calls and telling the interns that we can't convert them now because of the way the business is performing and stuff. So I really hope over the next couple of years that employers really start investing in that early talent because as an organization, we need to start listening to that early talent. They're coming in with different ways of doing things, different ideas. You know what? If you don't have that talent in your organization and you're not listening to them, your organization is going to turn into a Blockbuster and it's going to go out of business, right? I don't know if you had Blockbuster in your countries or wherever you're listening.
I was gonna say we've got it here. Well, I've had it here. But I get what you mean. So having that interest to kind of support the next generation and doing it through the highs as well as the lows. And look, it's going to look different per company. Don't get me wrong, but having no kind of program to support something like that, I think you're right. They bring up different ideas, and especially the next generation of how to attract future talents as well. I mean, recruitment alone, it's changed dramatically.
Yeah, and we need to make those changes. But I think also, I'm really curious at how much ChatGPT is really going to change the way we're doing recruiting. We already know candidates are asking ChatGPT to write their CVs.
Yeah.
They're asking them to write my case study. They're asking them to code out things. So, I think we also need to adapt to that ChatGPT. Like, I know, like I've been using some coding platforms, and even those companies are struggling to monitor the cheating mechanisms of candidates potentially using ChatGPT. So I think that's going to change how we recruit in the future. Of like, do we really need to ask them to do a candidate to do a case study? If it's that easy for ChatGPT to do it, what are we actually getting out of that? Maybe it's more live stuff.
On the software side, you've got a thing called Devin, which I'm not sure if you've seen, but it's essentially a software ChatGPT. The demo they gave was phenomenal. Reality, we'll have to see when it goes live, but that will be a game changer in the software space and will, in my opinion, wipe out, if it works how it is, it will wipe out a lot of types of roles. It also means that we look at our candidate experience, and does it mean we, as you say, read the case study, read the take-home challenge, and say to everyone, come on site, or do a live programming session with us, do a live case study with us. That it could be that we just completely take away that element. Yeah, it makes it longer, but if that's the only way we can get rid of cheating, because you're right, there's a few coding platforms claim anti-cheating, and it did work. But since 18 months ago, I speak to them. I know they're trying to find solutions.
I also think data is going to really start driving us even more. I think that it's, as an organization, I think we need to better understand our data and are we getting the right data? And in order for us to do that, we need our ATS providers to get better at providing data. There's so many different ATS systems out there. Some of them, they're okay. Some of them are not great. So I think over the next couple of years, I think the recruitment teams are going to get more data driven and using that data to help understand what projects or decisions they need to make as a business. But I think right now what I'm seeing is some organizations are struggling to get the right data. And when they're getting it, they're still questioning, is this the right data? So I think we need to get more efficient understanding the data and actually how do we get it.
Well, Jeff, I really appreciate you taking the time and running through that. And, there's definitely some things in there, like I said, that I've learned I'm going to take away from me. And I really hope that those listening do as well. So thank you for joining and for being part of this.
No, thank you so much for having me. It was super fun. Glad I was able to do it. And greetings from Bangkok. I'll see you all in Berlin.
From our side, I'll put your LinkedIn into the and your socials when we post this. So if anyone wants to have a discussion with you about the future work projects, around obviously how you supported minority projects, then they can always reach out and take it from there. But thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks.
All right, stop.